Coming up on this special edition of the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, it is budget day here in the state of California. We're going to talk about the governor's budget proposal, what that means for you and your school districts, and talk to our budget experts.
The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break starts now.
And it's just after 3 o'clock. Happy New Year to all of you. Welcome to this special edition of the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, along with Dr. Edgar Zazwata, ACSA's Executive Director. I'm Naj and Edgar, ACSA's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome, our first show of 2026, and it's the big one. It's the governor's budget proposal. Edgar, you know, from the 10 years you and I have worked together, this is one of my 3 favorite days here at ACSA.
You are the original budget nerd here at ACSA. You know, cue those pictures. You know, we've all seen them. We don't even have to show them anymore,
right?
Or, you know, but some of my favorite. There we go.
Yeah.
I figured I'd just get it out of the way. Just get it out of the way.
Can I just?
Okay, so here's the thing, Naj. I was gonna say Happy New Year to you, Michael. You can take it off the screen now. Thank you. But here's the thing. I was gonna say Happy New Year. You know, like the whole cliche, New Year, new me. We didn't have. I know you've been on a journey, and look at you, looking way younger and better than even it was. How long that picture was,
and I know so long ago.
Kudos to you. You didn't wait till the new year to get on your fitness journey. I know you've been working hard there, and it's been paying off. So, but I do hope the new year has been successful to start. Okay, here's sometimes hot takes.
Yeah.
What's the day in January where we stop saying Happy New Year? Like, at what point does it, like, why are we still saying Happy New Year? We're on, what's today? January 9th? Today's January 9th?
Today's the 9th. Here's what's funny about
when is it no longer appropriate to say Happy New Year?
I think when you get to midway through the month of January. Okay. That's what I'm going to say. Like the 15th, if you are still saying it after that. Now, Larry David said this on Curb Your Enthusiasm years ago, because somebody was like March and somebody was like, oh, Happy New Year. And he took big issue with that. I'm going to say it's January 15th. What's your feeling on that?
I'm getting pretty close to being done with it already. Even, although we don't write as much anymore. I know the big thing, nobody writes checks, but I think the age-old thing was that you would put the wrong date, the 25 instead of 26, but we don't have to face that then. I mean, aside from signing documents and,
All right, so one last.
I'm officially
question.
Done. No more Happy New Year for me.
Okay, all right, that's fine. And I know we're wasting our great viewers' time. How many people on your drive to work still have their Christmas lights up?
Oh, that too many.
Too many.
That's why I didn't ever put them up. So,
okay, folks, it is budget day. We've got our 2 ACSA legislative analysts, advocates with us. Cordell Hampton and Diana Vu will join us in just a couple of moments. First, let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the specifics with regard to the governor's budget, the details you need to know. The governor and his administration are proposing a $348.3 billion balanced budget. That includes a general fund budget of $248.3 billion and creates a reserve of $23 billion. Now, here's how that reserve breaks down. $14.4 billion for the rainy day fund, $4.5 billion for economic uncertainties, and $4.1 billion for the public school rainy day fund. So let's talk now about public education. The Prop 98 guarantee is set at $125.5 billion. The Department of Finance notes that the Prop 98 guarantee has grown 60% since 2018-19. The per-pupil spending is at $27,418, and a few other breakdowns for you. Fully funded universal free transitional kindergarten gets $1.9 billion. Community schools gets $4.1 billion. Before, after, and summer school, $4.6 billion, and universal meals, an additional $1.8 billion. Edgar, I did want to make note of this number because this is the number that I know a lot of districts are going to be interested in. The local control funding formula, COLA, is at 2.41% according to the budget proposal of note. The Legislative Analyst's Office in their fiscal outlook for 26-27 proposed a 2.51% COLA. Edgar, I gave a lot of numbers right there. You and I and many others were watching the budget proposal come down from Department of Finance. Give me some of your takeaways and the impact on our members in public education.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, as we do this yearly exercise of waiting, we get some briefings beforehand, some briefings afterhand. Our team is pretty good, of getting some of the details even before it's come out. And there's this big anticipation in Sacramento and elsewhere, obviously in the school world, but specifically in the school world, where I think we almost think of like the initial January release as questioning, how much is the state going to give us? How much are they going to decide to send to schools, to the various programs? But one thing I was really thinking about, that's not really the exercise. The exercise, especially because of the chart you just showed, Naj, is Prop 98, the formula for all intents and purposes. That's what dictates how much money schools are going to get, right? Like that's really the determining factor. It's not like, yes, there is some to some extent, and we'll get into that because I think that's actually playing itself out in a very complicated way this year. It's really the decisions points is how they're going to send the money out, right? Like in what ways are they going to give the monies to schools? We used to use this analogy when we were talking about shifting to LCFF, is that the state under the categorical programs, they would essentially give us payment in the form of gift cards, that here you could give money and you could use it for X, Y, and Z, where LCFF was supposed to give us more flexibility to utilize those dollars. And some of those things have shifted, and I'm not going to get into a full discussion about LCFF, but I think where it came down, this year and every year, it's really the decision points is how the state really has an obligation to send X amount of dollars to the schools, where the decision points is like, how are they going to decide to divvy those out, right? And so to your question this year, I think the big takeaways is, okay, I always try to start positive, right? We're not facing cuts. Like I think back a year ago in terms of some of the turmoil that we were seeing, we were worried about deferrals, what was happening with the revenue situation. I mean, revenues, generally speaking, and our team will get into detail in this piece, that they've exceeded expectations, right? So there's some dollars that now the state has to spend. So I think by all told, that's a positive. The flip side of that, and you're going to hear, and some of this gets into edu-speak and gets a little bit complicated. One of the proposals that we're definitely going to be concerned about is, while you saw some of those numbers, it's year over year increases, and we are seeing more money for LCFF. We are seeing, a COLA. There's some discretionary dollars that we'll talk about. There is a proposal that I think this is going to be the big takeaway, especially from us in the education community. There's upwards of $5.6 billion that, because of how the state has accounted for dollars last year, that what they're calling is a settlement payment, that they've adjusted the numbers last year. So now the obligation this year this year in the current year. So for next year, this budget would send, less money than they would otherwise send to schools. So I think that's where it gets a little bit complicated. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. You'll hear our folks, when we bring in school services, they'll talk about this. This will be one of the themes, right? So that, I think that's some of these pieces that we always have to be looking out for from a formula basis. I don't want to call them manipulations or whatnot, but it just, how they account for dollars does impact the amount of money that then gets to our schools, right? So that's one piece. I think, but the other big takeaway for me is, we do appreciate that with some of, we had heard that there was going to be one-time dollars that were going to come to the field, that the governor is that it from what we've seen, and the big caveat, we should just put the warning down at the beginning, that anything we say today is with the caveat that we reserve the right to change our opinion until we see like the finer details, right? We talked about trailer bill language. Our team's going to talk about this because we're basing it on briefings. We're basing on these summary documents until we see actual trailer bill legislative language. That's when we rest assured, okay, how's this going to work? Based on what we know today, it does appear that these discretionary one-time dollars, 2.8 billion statewide, that's a big amount. I don't believe we have the per ADA amount yet. I know school services and others we'll be providing some estimates here by the end of the day. But it's a significant amount. I think the big piece for us is to continue to push. The governor acknowledges that those are best left at the discretion of the schools, of the school leaders, those closest to the students. Undoubtedly, there's going to be some opinions in the legislature that probably are going to want to reduce those dollars down, maybe use it for other things, and probably put some more parameters, or maybe change the distribution of dollars. We've been historically on the record about we want those dollars to be discretionary, and we think it's the most fair way to just put them out per ADA, given some of the other funding streams go out in different ways. So those are just the highlights. There's, there was a sprinkling. There's some good things there, some investments, some commitments on staying the course with some of the programs. I know there's a lot of opinions in the field about whether some of these programs, should continue or not. But I think what we've been channeling every time we've talked budget over the last couple of weeks, we whether it be us, school services, our team, we've all been saying that we expected that especially going into the governor's last budget, we would have been very surprised if they went in a different direction. The last piece I'll talk about, which I think is going to be a big discussion piece, is this proposal to change some of the governance structure here in the state of California. Namely, the governor's proposing to kind of change some of the duties of the superintendent of public instruction and how they manage the California Department of Education, which is an interesting piece. There's this PACE report that came out that looked at, does it make sense to do it the way we do it, and offering up some recommendations. We've been on the record. We gave some comments that we think we welcome this conversation, because I think it does, from my perspective, if we brought out a piece of paper today and we had to create our governance structure of how's the state going to connect to the schools and to the field, I don't think any of us would structure it the way we have it today. So I think any conversation to have gives us a little opportunity to do some reflection and maybe some refinement, I think is a good thing. So a lot there, but generally speaking, I like we say every year, it's the step one of the process. I already saw some questions about, is some of this guaranteed or whatnot? Nothing's guaranteed right now, because everything is just a proposal. And the legislature, like every year, this always looks very different than what we see it at the end of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, I do see some questions that are in there. Neri and Maria have both put in questions into the chat. Go ahead and put your questions into our comment section. We'll try and tackle some of those with our two legislative advocates near the end of their segments. Let's go ahead and bring in one of our legislative advocates, Cordell Hampton, with us today, our budget expert here at ACSA. Cordell, so good to have you with us. What are the potential impacts on school districts of this proposed $5.6 billion settle up for 25-26?
Yeah, thanks, Naj. Thank you for having me. I also want to say Happy New Year. Just continue on that theme.
You said we're done with this? We're
not to the 15th quite yet. But no, this impact, we saw this last year, right, when the governor withheld $1.9 billion from the 24-25 budget. And we're seeing this again happening now with $5.6 billion. It's the same impacts. I think it's the same message that we continue to uplift and advocate and share with the legislature and the governor's office and Department of Finance, that this is money that should be rightfully in school districts' hands, trying to address and maintain programs and that type of sustainability for students, for teachers, for admin staff, and ensuring that the programs that we're seeing student success continue to be maintained and continue to see the students thrive in those communities. Over the summer or over the fall, Education Coalition, so ACSA, CSBA, California County Superintendents, CFT, CTA, and a few others, I'm just forgetting off the top of my head, we met over the fall to discuss the governor's action last year with his setup proposal, and we decided to collectively send a letter to the legislature, Department of Finance, and the governor's office about preserving the integrity of Prop 98 and protecting it from further manipulations. Yet we're seeing this come again. And so this is just, we think, a huge blow in terms of providing that sustainability that we continually ask for, and how that sets schools back in terms of planning and how they want to continue seeing student success. So this is something that we'll definitely be kind of continue to advocate on in the same way we advocated on last year.
Cordell, thanks for helping us. And I know Naj loves budget day. I won't ask you if you love it or not. I know it's probably a slightly different workload for you than it is for Naj today, trying to get through the analysis and answer all the questions we throw your way. But appreciate your work. I know you've been with us a relatively short time, but it feels like you've been here with us forever now, and definitely left your fingerprints on our advocacy and what our members or the influence that we have across the street here. One of the more important numbers I think that Naj threw out that I know a lot of our district leaders always are looking out for is this cost of living adjustment, because it really dictates the amount of new dollars that we're going to see, especially on LCFF. So kind of two questions. One, how does that compare to what we maybe anticipated? The 2.41%, I believe, is the number. And then two, is there any chance that number changes before it's finalized?
Yeah, so heading into this budget cycle here in January, in November, the Legislative Analyst Office put out a report, and they believed that with increased revenues, that the COLA would have been 2.51%, and that was not without the 6 data point usually used to calculate COLA. With this governor's release, they're estimated to be at 2.41%, so slightly lower. I think something that we need to keep in mind is that this is only with 6 out of the 8 data points. There's still 2 more that need to be collected. One should be coming at the end of this month. And then, of course, there'll be one around May revise or April, and then we'll get May revise, see what that final number is. So all that to say that this is currently 2.41. We have 2 more data points that need to be collected, and that number can shift either upwards or downwards. So as we always say, don't take this number to the bank. It's only just the beginning of what that COLA number will be. And we'll find out more once we get to May revise.
Cordell, let me ask you about the Prop 98 rainy day fund, and why does its balance, which is projected at $4.1 billion, trigger the 10% school district reserve cap in 25, 26, and 26, 27?
Yeah, so this is really interesting for this budget cycle. So as you mentioned, the reserve will reach $4.1 billion at the end of a 3-year budget window, and that's 24, 25, 25, 26, and 26, 27. With $3.8 billion being deposited in 24-25, $424 million being deposited in 25-26, and then withdrawal of $407 million in 26-27, and then they're making a discretionary deposit of $240 million in 25-26. The 10% school district reserve cap is triggered because under current law, districts are limited in the reserves they can hold for the fiscal years immediately following the rainy day fund balance equal to the greater of 3% for TK12. What this means for districts, for school districts, this means they have to think about how much money that they have in their reserves locally, and potentially limiting the flexibility to carry over the large amounts of unspent funds. The districts might have to exercise reserves for immediate operational use, one-time investments. Again, this is just the very beginning of the process. It's something that we're going to keep as revenues continue to come in and change over time. We'll see how this changes, and if this local triggering of the cap will continue into May revise.
Yeah, thanks, Cordell. And I saw the question there. Yeah, the COLA is 2.41% is what they've announced here today. One big picture question. I know we obviously here at ACSA and the education community, everybody watching, we're very education centric, right? And rightly so. This is our universe. This is why we as an organization exist, to advocate for schools. But I think it is important to kind of take all of this that we're saying and almost think about it in the broader context, right? We talk about the proposal to withhold some of those dollars, and I believe some of the justification from the state is that they feel like revenues are volatile and they're worried about overcommitting there. I mean, just in the context of maybe the bigger picture, what were the big picture perspectives as the governor was presenting this budget? Do we expect that this is going to be a tough budget, maybe on other sides of the budget? As we're always advocating for money in schools, I think it is important for us to think about what is the big picture, because that's going to be determinant of how successful we are going to be on, like reversing a proposal like the one we talked about, or pushing for other things as the revenue situation changes.
Yeah, I think this is a very similar story to what we saw last year, where Education does relatively well. Obviously, the $5.6 billion withholding is going to be a very big sticking point for education community as a whole. But compared to the rest of the side of the budget, I mean, we're kind of seeing the same stories play out as we saw last year, especially with the federal government passing HR 1, what type of impacts that has on the healthcare and social services side. And then we also have the state also has some unexpected costs in terms of, pension liabilities, other healthcare costs, originally lower numbers, some losses in revenues that they thought that would materialize. I think overall, we're going to kind of continue to see this huge change and shifts in discussion around how healthcare and social services and other programs are funded on the non-98 side. And likewise, that we saw last year with the 1.9 withholding, governor or the legislature and the administration looking to Prop 98 and how they can kind of leverage Prop 98 dollars and kind of solve some of those non-98 problems.
All right, Cordell Hampton, ACSA legislative advocate. Cordell, we'll hopefully see you at the end of our show. Let's go ahead and switch over to our next legislative advocate, Diana Vu, joining us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break on Budget Proposal Day. Diana, good to have you here. So we know in the budget there's a lot of updates to the various education programs. And we can't get to them all. I mentioned a few. Is there a general theme, though, that you're seeing throughout this budget proposal?
Yeah, actually, there is for the most part. So the governor, similar to last year, is staying the course, which is what he calls it, which means that he is essentially funding and prioritizing his signature programs. So this includes his universal transitional kindergarten. In this budget, there are no changes, but as of last year, he fully implemented it at $1.9 billion. So that continues to be in the budget, and that it's going to be ongoing. Universal Meals is another big program of his, which he continues to also fully fund. This year, he made a little tweak with it, though. He reduced the amount by $67.9 million to account for the last year's overestimate of the program's use, but still with a commitment of fully funding it. There is an addition to it as well, though, a one-time $100 million for kitchen and infrastructure and training. So we've seen this before, and it will probably likely be similar again. We won't know until we see the details, until we see budget trailer bill. But it's essentially, again, to support schools to provide fresh meals from locally grown ingredients. There are other things that are also outside his wheelhouse that he has to address, like the Learning and Recovery Block Grant. So this was based on a court ruling, and he's providing a final payment of that with $757.3 million.
Diana, so just to thank you for helping us out here on this Friday afternoon. So just to kind of recap the big picture there, for a lot of these programs that the governor has really made his signature ones, and I said in my opening, you kind of reiterated that we expected that. It was like, they're not going to deviate from these pieces. And when we say those signature programs, you named a number of them, right? ELOP, there's community schools, there's the meals program. I know there's investments in TK, and there's a lot of pieces. And pretty much the consistency there is that they're going to continue that on. So with that said, what about, is there specific, while they're not going to move away from them, what would you say are the biggest changes? Any specific things, anything that's worth just highlighting on what's different with some of these signature programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there are some of his other programs, so community schools being one of them, which we know that funding is set to run out. So this proposal does propose a $1 billion ongoing funding. And to answer Maria's question, it is to expand it to more school sites. The ELOP is another one. So we are really excited to see this proposal, which increases rate 2 LEAs to $1,800 per student, a guaranteed amount. So ACSA has been pushing to stabilize this program because we had heard from the field over and over again that it is difficult to plan without consistent funding to be able to know. And we're excited because we've also heard from all of you the benefits of the program, about how it has helped provide consistent care for working families and ongoing enrichment for students.
Rate 2 with the ELOP, Diana. So I know that's some of that, and we're referring to those districts. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's those districts that have under 55% unduplicated count. right?
Oh my gosh, yes. You're
I
still
still know
making
some
our
things.
DR
I still know a
director.
few
Wow.
things. Or I just read it this morning.
Even
Either
on a
way.
Friday, Diana, he's sharp.
Good detail.
Or I'm pretending to be here with my notes. So.
Diana, let me ask about our members' role right now in advocacy, because now we move to the legislature. What is the role for our members moving forward?
To have them just, honestly, always appreciate hearing from them. So if you have any feedback, always please feel free to reach out. We don't bite, many of you know this, and we want to hear what you have to say, because sometimes it's not always clear to us what are priorities and what's needed in the field. ELOP was a perfect example of that. We had heard over and over again from our members that rate 2 needs to be stabilized. So we made sure to make it an advocacy priority. And then also let us know if you want to be even more involved. We are always looking for people to testify, join in on meetings with us, with legislative staff, and the list goes on, really.
Let me, Edgar, let's bring Cordell back on as well, because we have a number of questions that have come in, and I want to try and tackle some of these before we get to the bottom of the hour. So Cordell Hampton back with us here on this special edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. And Cordell and Diane, I'll have either one of you jump in. Diane, I think you were talking about a little bit about community schools. Maria Thompson, our great member down in Southern California, asked, for community schools, are they funding additional schools, or are they extending currently funded schools? What can you tell us about that?
The intent is to fund additional schools. Again, we don't have details, any more details, but the intent is to fund additional schools.
Okay. I'm going to move over to Neri's question. And Neri's question, our great member, Neri Pais, who watches the show all the time, asked about impact on bargaining. We know that there's a lot of districts that are in bargaining right now. For either of you, feel free to jump in. What's the impact right now? Now that the budget proposal is out, what's the impact on bargaining?
Well, if our team doesn't mind, I don't mind chiming in on this, just because I was talking to our great friends, John Gray and company at School Services on this very topic. And this has been a theme, right? And I think we asked Patty about this before the break. I know a number of you are in one of these 32 districts that are, our partners at CTA have identified with the We Can't Wait campaign. And the goal there is that they're trying to be strategic in terms of just the bargaining and the request across these districts. I know that's it's put more pressure at the table in a lot of these districts, and we've seen in West Contra Costa, we've seen other districts going to impasse. There's a number even outside of those 32. I think it's safe to say that nothing in this proposal is going to necessarily make what's happening at the table any easier. I mean, I think that's I'm not saying anything that's probably welcome, but I think that's just the truth. I think we're in for probably a challenging labor landscape, based on everything we've heard from some of our partners, based on just kind of some of the strategies that we've seen out there. So I think that's one piece, having to hear out our employees and trying to work with our partners, but also that. The one thing, and I'll usually say this at the beginning, where tomorrow morning, or if not now, it used to be tomorrow morning, but now we live in a real world. The governor comes out, headlines are right away, right? There's no tomorrow. I don't know if anybody gets the paper anymore, right? For the headlines, it's just it's immediate. But the challenge that I think we always have at a community level is that the big takeaway is schools get X% billion dollars, schools get 20, and I think we had that figure, right? We took it from the governor summary pages, 20 per ADA. I think I'm preaching the choir on this call. I mean, I'm sorry, on this show. I know we get mad. We're not. I get yelled at myself here. But that doesn't tell the story, right? And I think folks know this because their schools in declining enrollment. Obligations have gone up. It's a very volatile environment on the revenue side. So it doesn't tell the story to just say schools are challenged. There's nothing, even with these numbers that look great in the aggregate, it doesn't tell the community story all the time. And I think that's sometimes the disconnect. Well, look, I just heard from Sacramento that they're getting all this infusion of these this huge dollars without seeing there's a lot of rising costs at the same time where in a lot of districts we're getting less and less students there. So I think for that reason, I think that on the bargaining front, it is going to be more challenging here this year, and nothing there is going to change that.
Let me ask this final question here. This comes from Helio Brasil, who's superintendent over at Keys Union School District. Helio asks, how much change do you see between now and a May revise given such chaos? I'll let both of you guys respond. Give me a 30-second response to that question. How much change do you see as we head towards the May revision? Diana, I'll have you start.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we could see a lot of change. We know that the budget proposal from the governor is just the first part of a long process. It's now up to the legislature to react to it. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a three-party deal between the Senate, the Assembly, and the legislature. And what his priorities are may not be the legislature's priorities. So in regards to policy, there could be a lot that will change.
Cordell, your thoughts on how much change you see, especially because we are likely to see some pushback on some of these proposals.
Yeah, I think in addition to I echo a lot of sentiments that Diana shared. I think in addition to what we see, things that we might be looking forward to, that there is a lot of room for improvement. There's going to be a lot of change between now and then, a lot of pushback, not only from the legislature, but also from education organizations regarding some of the proposals. And so we could see a lot of tweaks and refinements over these next few months, and to make some new proposals from the legislature as we move forward too. But we'll be looking forward to you guys kind of leading us through the next couple of months and making sure we're advocating for our members.
Naj, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to steal your question, maybe put a slightly different spin and give both of our team members a chance to answer it. So maybe if I could ask both of you think about one thing so kind of along the same lines of the things that we think might get pushback here, whether it be from the governor's office, not from the governor, from the legislature, or maybe from some of our partners or community groups. So basically one piece in the proposal that we actually like, that is far from a guarantee, that we're going to have to push to keep. And maybe on the other side, where do you see the biggest hurdle in terms of, hey, we don't love this proposal at first glance, but it may be some difficulty to move on them on. Cordell, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we might see a pushback on is the settle-up approach, the governor's settle-up approach of $5.6 billion, right? It's not his second year doing it. I think, we talk a lot about stabilizing Prop 98 and upholding the integrity of Prop 98. This might be an area where members let it happen the first year, but now this is the second time coming back, and we're really in a state of declining enrollment, making sure that we're trying to provide for our students. So I think this could be definitely an area of discussion amongst the legislature and education management groups.
Diana?
On my end, I think it's the discretionary block grant. We saw this last year. The legislature pushed back on it. They wanted a lot more oversight, and they wanted to kind of split it up and decide how they would like to see the funds spent. So it's something we will continue pushing back on, making sure that we have the maximum discretionary funds as possible.
All right, Cordell Hampton and Diana Vu, both ACSA legislative advocates, members of our ACSA governmental relations team. Cordell and Diana, Happy New Year to the both of you. Have a great rest of the day, rest of the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Edgar, we are a little bit across the bottom of the hour here, but I just kind of want to get your thoughts because, this time last year, we were kind of bracing for a lot. We're now a year into the current federal administration. There's still a lot of changes happening with public education. This budget kind of reflects some things, maybe not other things. Just your overall thoughts on where we are public education wise, and maybe what today's budget proposal signifies for public education over this next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are in I've lost count, year 10, year 11 of doing some form, taking, as we see from the picture, taking different ways that we've been doing kind of this initial analysis. And I probably have said this every time that, when we take a look at this piece, it's not our job is to find the things that we don't like about the budget, right? Like that's part of the analysis, to go and advocate for folks and to try to modify it, to get some of the perspective from our folks, even when things sound great on paper. What is the actual implementation of this? What is this going to look like, right? I think there's going to be a number of those pieces that we're going to have to continue to dig in, and we don't have that full picture. And it's a mixed bag, right? Cordell talked about that big picture. I think that it's safe to say the education community is not going to be happy with the proposal of diverting some of those dollars. There's some positive investments there, right? Like there's some positive investments, and I think we're going to have to try to support the governor's proposal on other pieces of it. Namely, what Diana teed up for us is, if we're going to want to keep some of those dollars discretionary, I think we're probably going to have to advocate to the legislature to make sure that they go in that direction, as opposed to lowering those amounts or putting more parameters on those dollars. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think big picture, one of the things that we said in terms of the themes of this year is there going to be some volatility. And I think this is the place where we're at, just given the economy. I'm sure this is where we're going to hear with some of the analysis over the next couple of days and weeks from all of our experts and friends about that, the uncertainty about the revenue situation that I think was echoed from the state, right? And I think us planning, or our leaders planning around that, I think is going to be the biggest challenge. And also in a year, I think the other big theme is potential change. You know, the proposals about the governance change at the same time, while we have SPI elections, there's going to be a new governor. This is really the last year where this is like the fulfillment of this vision. Whoever's in office, you know, after there's a change here in Sacramento, we may go in a different direction. Just remember the years we spent with Jerry Brown in terms of just the emphasis on local control. And, you know, there was a continuation, but with some tweaks. So I think it's interesting. How do we finish out this segment, this chapter, before starting that next story with the next leadership here in the state?
Folks, we got a couple of big weeks coming up here at ACSA. I want to tell you about some of the events that are coming up. Edgar and I will not be on the show next Wednesday because he and I will be in San Diego at our Every Child Counts Symposium. That's January 12th through 14th in San Diego. If you're down in San Diego, be sure to come and say hello. If you're not registered, you are missing out. Already 1,600 people have registered for this event. You will want to register too. You can go to ACSA.org/professional-learning for more, or go to that QR code. Also, ACSA Superintendent Symposium coming your way January 28th through 30th. Again, you can go to our website, or you can click that QR code for information and registration. And folks, if you also have an opportunity to go to our Equity Institute, 2026 Equity Institute. This is another great event that you don't want to miss. March 25th through 27th at the Westin in Anaheim. Again, a QR code right there, or jump onto our website for information on all of those conferences. And folks, if you like what you've seen here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we invite you to be part of our family. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, get updates and alerts when we're about to come up on the air. And then, of course, if you have great stories happening in your school communities, we want to tell those stories. Go ahead and send your talking points, your news releases, your photos to our EdCal editor, Michelle Carl at mcarl@acsa.org. Again, Edgar and I not on next week. We will be over at the Every Child Counts Symposium in San Diego. But again, come say hello. But we are on the following week, more budget analysis, and we're going to dig deep into the impact of the budget on your school district and what these numbers mean. Until then, have a great rest of the day, rest of the weekend, and we'll see you next time here on the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break.